All right, the time is now 6 p.m. and I'll call to order our regularly scheduled McMinnville Fire District meeting on September 14th at 6 p.m. With that, I'll ask the chief to do roll call of directors.
Yeah, that's right. Getting ahead of myself. Director Sparrow.
Here.
Treasurer Traff.
Here.
Secretary Pratt.
Here.
Vice President Smith. Standing by for Vice President Smith to be brought online. Vice President Smith, are you online?
He's just trying to mute it and no video. There we go.
Vice President Smith.
Good being here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. President Gardner.
Present. And with that, I'll call on the chief to lead us in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
That brings us to change the agenda. Ask the board if anybody would like to make any changes to the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which refer to your packets for minutes from the August 17th and August 24th meeting. Would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda as proposed.
I'd make a motion.
Motion by Director Sparrow and second by Secretary Pratt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes 5-0. We don't have any financial reports to share this evening, so that takes us to public comment. I do have one member of the public that submitted a public comment card, and that's Janet Redmond. I would remind anybody on Zoom that we do limit public comment to 3 minutes. And this is for anything that's not pending litigation or in a quasi-judicial land use matter. So with that, I'll open up public comment to Janet.
Thank you. Just one real quick thing. I was wondering if there's any way you can make the packet of the material for the public that's here at the meeting available earlier in the day, the morning, or online. I mean, a lot of times the things in there you're addressing that evening. And so if you can't review them ahead, it's hard to provide any comment. And so just either an online link or say they're available by contacting the fire department or whatever.
Yeah, we'll work to get an online link put up at least the day of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom or via phone?
I don't see anyone raising their hand.
One last call for anybody on Zoom to raise your hand for public comment. Hearing none, I'll close the public comment period, and thank you, Janet, for being engaged and sharing your thoughts. So that brings us to our business section of the meeting, where we have approval of board policies 15, 17 through 19, and 27. And I'll refer you to your packet for that. And if Chief wanted to share any.
Actually, I would, thank you, Mr. President. We're working through these policies. Just yesterday, we've been working with special districts on a policy guidelines that they have. We've been relatively consistent with most of their guidelines. The standing committees of the board or board policy 15, which has already been tabled once for some questions about this policy. I'm going to ask to be table board policy 15 again, because they have some outstanding suggestions and ideas that are not addressed in the policy that we used on how to select your committee members and how long they are in for a term and how to remove them if you want. And our policy doesn't address any of that. So I want to put a good product on the table for you. So if I can ask to be number 15 to be delayed until next meeting, I'll have it corrected and ready to go.
That sounds good with me. Is that good with other members of the board to table 15 till we can get some further revisions to it?
Good here.
Good here.
All right, so we'll move on to board policy 17.
17 is a requirement for the board policies. But it is exactly an excerpt out of the procurement policy that we have already adopted. So we have to have it in policy separate, but it is a copy and paste of the procurement law that we amended 2 meetings ago, I believe it was. 17, on the 17th.
Okay. I'll open that up for discussion. Any thoughts on board policy 17 or any grammatical modifications any board members would like to make? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve board policy 17 as presented.
I'll move that we approve it.
All right, a second on board policy 17.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously 5-0. Board policy 18, reimbursement for district services. Any?
Board policy 18 is another one of those policies that we are required to have outside of the ordinance, which I'll discuss in a little bit here. But this is a lot of it pulls directly from the ORS or from the ordinance that you've already approved or will approve again in the next couple of meetings.
Anything in board policy 18? Any directors would like to modify or wordsmith? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt board policy 18 as presented. Somebody's
Echo.
some mute on Zoom. Somebody's echo. Some mute on Zoom.
I believe Director Smith was trying to comment.
Director Smith, you were broken up. Can you try again?
Vote yes.
Okay.
Turn your volume down a little bit, Director Smith. Your mic picking up reverberations from the meeting here.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think that should work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Or maybe try muting when you're not speaking. Board policy 18, motion in a second.
I'd like to make the motion we approve board policy 18.
And I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 5-0. I take this to board policy 19, the longest one of the evening.
Board policy 19 is the public records retention policy. It basically states that we'll have the list of records required by law, which are actually in Oregon Administrative Rules, chapters 166, section 150. We have that document on the computers in the administration, and we use that regularly to schedule and manage our records retention. So.
And with how that's written, basically any changes to that administrative rule, it'll just
It
kind of
automatically changes, correct? Yep.
Okay. I'm happy with that. It keeps us in active compliance regardless what they do at the state.
I agree.
I'll entertain a motion on board policy 19.
I'll make a motion to approve board policy 19.
Second.
Moved by Kraft and seconded by Sparrow. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Now to board policy 27 related to purchase authorizations. This one's a little bit more in depth, and I know we do have some latitude in this to move it around if there's anything in there that any directors would like, but Chief, could you give us a brief overview?
Basically, this is the authorization of the individuals within the organization that are allowed to do purchasing and or authorized purchasing, and there are dollar limits to accomplish that. We had a preliminary discussion on this. This was not in the policy handbook that we used, but it is one that is recommended by SDAO so that we can make sure that we're staying within the guidelines for the accounting and auditing purposes. And we want to make sure that all of our internal controls are in place. So this is one of the steps that the auditors will use to verify that our internal controls are in place and give the chief or the chief officers the latitude to make the purchases they need to without having to come to the board for every small purchase. So the highlights from the ordinance or from the policy are battalion chiefs have a $2,000 spending limit, as well as the office manager. Assistant chiefs have a $10,000 spending limit, $50,000 for the fire chief. As far as when I say spending limit, that's for a single expenditure as far as that goes. And then anything that exceeds 50,000 or that have bully thresholds for construction contracts, any real estate transactions, operating contingency transfers, expenditures, other expenditures the fire chief deems necessary, and any federal and state grants need to come to the board for approval as a matter of normal process.
Thresholds sound good to members of the board, or would you like any modifications to those, or have any concerns, or? You good, Rick?
I'm good. I think it gives chief latitude to buy what he needs.
Yeah.
As a matter of norm, just for a reference to the board, unless we're making a capital purchase like a truck or in our budget this year, fire apparatus, I believe there is one contract that we sign annually that's more than $50,000, and that's for the volunteer retirement plan. And so if that needs to come to the board because of that, that's not a huge change in workload.
Good. Hearing no comments, I would entertain a motion to adopt board policy 27 around purchasing and authorization.
Make that motion, board policy 27.
And a second,
I will second it.
motion by Secretary Pratt and second by Vice President Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. So that brings us to item B, which is our fire chief hiring process update. I'll refer that to HR director, which is. You kicked under the table there?
Yes.
Um,
Chin shot.
paramedic over here. So the fire chief process, I think we've nailed down kind of what the interview process will look like. We'll have 3 panel interviews on the 12th, as we've discussed, which will include a public safety panel, an employee panel, and also a community panel. We'll debrief those, hold an executive session after those debriefs to decide what candidates will move forward in the process to board interviews. The next day, we'll host, we'll do a tour, a meet and greet, and board interviews, and go from there. I think I had one outstanding question.
Are we doing the meet and greet the night of the 12th, or you're saying we're doing it?
Sorry, that's what it was. We're doing it on the 12th after the executive session. So we'll make a decision about what candidates are moving forward to the meet and greet. Have the meet and greet in the evening, so public can attend those meet and greets. And then on the 13th is the board interviews and the tour.
Was everybody able to hear that?
If I could I follow up on a couple of things? I did have a conversation, well, an email conversation with the attorney. He's working on his schedule. If he's not available for those time slots that I've asked him to be available for, he will have someone for us. And also there is some statutory, not statutory, but there is some requirements that once the process is written up in a formal process, in the next meeting or two, we'll probably bring the process back just for adoption of the process as part of the formal process, so that part of the requirements for special districts.
And
We've done the job description, we've done what salary, we've had the public comments on the process throughout and the ability to make comment, but I believe we'll probably have to pass the process as a matter of how we will bring in
the
the chief
resolution.
executive officer. Yeah.
Okay, and then does that process call out a clock? So we need to make sure that's, 14 days ahead of our October 12th date, or do we?
No, it's just that it would just be the board has to adopt the process.
Okay.
Or approve the process.
Before we can have an executive session
Right.
about
Before we have
hiring.
to get to the executive session, we have to have the board approve the process.
Okay. Were you guys able to hear the panels on Zoom?
I heard a little bit. Can you refresh on the dates again?
Yeah, so October 12th is our all-day panel interviews. We'll have 3 different panels: a community panel, public safety panel, and an employee panel. And then after those panel interviews, we as a board will go into executive session and determine who moves forward to the meet and greet that evening. And then the following day will be candidate tours for those finalists of the district. And then we'll have a board panel. All of us board members will interview them in executive session. Right, yeah. So one candidate at a time in executive session, and then we'll come out of that executive session with a candidate, and then Vicky, you will notify the candidates and either negotiate that day or negotiate Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, I think that covers it.
Yeah, lastly, I would just say, we are going to engage the panel members and ask them if they have certain questions they'd like included on the panel process, so be reaching out soon. And then I did hear from SDAO today, and there's approximately a dozen applications at this point, so.
Okay. Any questions of HR Director Hedges or Chief Lyford on that?
I have one more thing I want to share, not directly related to the fire chief, but they just hosted a recruitment process for firefighter EMTs. And Todd had a great idea to survey our candidates that came in. So Amy and Jenny provided a short 3-question survey to everybody that interviewed. So we wanted to share the results of that with, sorry, you're online, I'll email you. Can you pass those down? The questions were, how did you hear about the job opening? Most of the candidates at NTN, a couple had employee referrals and a couple were from the Daily Dispatch. But the second question is probably the most insightful and I thought would be interesting to share with the board. And that was what are the top 3 things you consider when deciding where you want to work. And so I thought that graph was a good representation, really high numbers for location, learning and growth opportunities, and then the culture of the organization. So feedback just to consider for the future, but that was.
Yeah, data is always important. So nice job.
I'll email that real.
And I'm sorry, I missed what the third question was.
Sorry, I did not say that. It was, did you experience any problems with NTN or governmentjobs.com in the application process? There were 2 people that noted just small problems. One of them was a limitation on the number of documents they could upload. And then the other was just the concern about the cost for NTN. So the testing costs and the price that they charge for that.
Great, thank you.
Anything else on HR perspective?
No, I'm sorry.
Good. It's all good.
I was trying to email and I realized I don't have their email address. So I'm having Amy send it.
Sounds good.
I do have just one clarifying question. So the 12 applicants that SDAO has received, is that just purely applications, or is that 12 that meet our requirements or have been looked at, or is that just purely we have 12 applicants so far?
So this is just 12 applications so far. As we talked briefly about before, SDAO and I will go through those applications and make sure that everybody meets minimum qualifications before those applications are forwarded. I do know just in brief conversation that pretty much everybody that's applied at least comes close to meeting those minimum requirements. So 12.
Great. Great, thank you.
That brings us to item C on our business action items, which is the interim chief appointment and discussion. I felt that it was important for us to have that discussion sooner rather than later, as we're a little over 2 weeks away from Rich retiring, and I didn't want to have that, the final meeting before he is no longer with us. And so that was a placeholder on the agenda. I also took the time this week to meet with all 3 of our assistant chiefs and chat with them one-on-one about if they were applying for the chief's process, as well as if they had any interest in the interim chief duties. I do feel with this being a 60 to 90 day interim chief position that there really is no value in looking external, especially with the skill set we have with our assistant chiefs. So really just wanted to open up the discussion there. As far as who we have as our assistant chiefs, the only one that is applying for a chief's position is Chief Hannafin. What I could take away from my 3 one-on-one meetings with them is that it's a very collaborative admin team up there, and they're all willing to help each other. And they're all willing to do the job if asked by the board. And so I just wanted to open that up for discussion tonight and see if anybody had any thoughts. But that's the high level of those meetings. And if anybody had any additional questions, I'm happy to get into that as well. And thank you to all three chiefs for agreeing to meet with me. Any thoughts, Ray?
Yeah, I agree. We got some strong candidates here that could do the job, and I wouldn't want to go outside.
If you
I
guys,
would just
Ray wanted to
just like to express my appreciation too for the willingness to work in that role of interim chief. It's much appreciated.
Director Sparrow and Traff, are you guys good with staying with an internal candidate for interim chief?
Absolutely. I think that makes the most sense. Yeah, and I mean, as far as obviously Chief Hannafin is going to be going for the fire chief position, did anyone else have passion even toward the interim spot, or is it pretty much, I mean, everyone's willing to do it, but is she the standout for that position?
I think if you're going off just resume and how long people have been in seats, Chief Hannafin's resume would be the strongest and most qualified. Chief Law was doing some operation stuff down in Amity for a couple of years when he first joined the department. As he's a training chief right now. His concern was if we went past the January 1 onboard date, which I don't think we will, is that it could set back some of our training processes for the current EMTs we're looking to onboard. Because we want to make sure we get them into the way that McMinnville does things in that 30 to 45 day window. And so if for some reason we got bogged down, that would be his concern he shared. And Chief Darby was willing to do it, but acknowledged he hasn't been here as long and deferred to Chief Law and Chief Hannafin.
Copy that.
Great. And yes, Mr. President, I agree with you that it doesn't make sense in the time period and crunch that we're under to go outside.
So with that, would anybody like to make a motion for an interim chief pending Chief Leifert's departure, or do you guys want to table this for a week, or what's your guys' thoughts on that?
I personally am willing to make a motion tonight for Chief Hannafin as the interim chief.
I'd second that.
All right. Any other thoughts or discussions from Vice President Smith or Director Sparrow?
No.
All right, so with that, we have a motion on the table by Secretary Pratt, or motion on the table by Treasurer Trapp and a second by Secretary Pratt. All those in favor of Chief Hannafin being the interim chief through our hiring process, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Congratulations, Chief Hannafin, and see you later. Thank you, Chief Law.
Excuse me while I kick.
That takes us to other business on our agenda, which is board committee and liaison reports. First on that, we have low staff, so I'll call on Treasurer Trapp if he has any updates on that.
I do have some updates. It's all secondhand information because at the last volunteer business meeting, they voted on adopting basically modifying the way that points are calculated, which is part of leading up to this new new way of compensating our volunteers. And that was approved. And that is going to be retroactive starting July 1 and go through June 30th of 24. Chief Law could speak more to this. But what he's relayed to me is that it's not going to change the cost to the plan at all. It just simply puts more emphasis as far as how points are awarded on drills, in response to calls, in response to business meetings, that sort of thing. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Director Traff. Chief Law, would you like to add anything?
Not the board has questions.
Any questions from the board? Do you want Chief Law to get down into the weeds? All right, hearing none other than tones, we'll move on to the branding committee.
Yes, I'm happy to report that we have our first meeting scheduled. Looks like all members of the committee can be there. So that meeting will be September 25th at 6 p.m. At the fire hall.
All right, thank you, Director Sparrow. I would also like to add that for these panels, we wanted to be able to thank people for their time, and so we have a slightly updated temporary permanent logo for those panel discussions, but we definitely are happy to see the branding committee getting going, and happy to see what you guys come away with that. And obviously, if there's a time and a place to engage the community, that's always appreciated as well. So
yeah, and that'll definitely be discussed at the meeting as far as the role that the community will play in that. So
thank you, Director Sparrow, and thank you for taking the lead on that. That takes us to board information reports. Anything from you, Secretary Pratt?
Oh, we had to cancel our tournament. We'll make the next one.
Yep. Thanks for your work on that. Sorry it didn't pan out.
All right.
I saved myself about a dozen golf balls on those 18 holes. Vice President Smith, anything information reports wise?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Sparrow or Treasurer Traff, anything additional board reports wise?
nothing additional here.
Nothing additional here.
All right, only thing I have is last Friday, I went up to the High Heaven Gate. County Commissioners are considering closing that gate, and Chief Hannafin, Law, and Darby were up there as well, as ODF and BLM and residents. There's, I don't know, maybe about 30 people up there. And lots of good discussion. I know today the Board of Commissioners met on that. They took some additional public comment. One from a Peavine resident that was concerned about their shifting traffic and not really accomplishing much. But they didn't land on a decision, and so if there is appetite from the board to put a letter, or if they want any public comment made, you have any strong feelings towards that, I think they're gonna move rather quickly, so we probably wanna have our thoughts prepared by next week, if that's something anybody's concerned about. As well as operations, if you have any formal requests, I would definitely entertain getting those on the agenda that we can forward on.
We've got a key to that gate, don't we?
Sorry,
Do we have a key to that gate
Not
to
to
access it if we needed?
Forestry Gate.
Yeah.
Up to the
It's a Warehouser gate.
Warehouser Gate.
We currently don't have,
We have
it, no.
Oh.
So other than that, we'll move on to department reports, and first up would be local 3099. Anything to report?
Thanks for your time. Got a couple things to report. First of all, our first annual softball tournament was this last weekend. We had 7 teams participate, raised about, we haven't counted every penny yet, but raised about $2,000 for MDA through that. So we're hoping to expand that from years for the coming years and hopefully get that up to bigger donations. I would like to thank you, Secretary Pratt, for coming out and cheering everybody on that nice hot day. Everyone had a good time, and it sounds like we're gonna have a lot of people come back next year. Other thing is October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If you aren't aware, all the firefighters in McMinnville and admin staff have, for the last 4 years, have gotten together. We have designed and printed up shirts that we've worn on duty, so different duty shirts, and we sold those to the volunteers, admin staff, and paid staff at their expense to raise money for With Courage here in town, a local breast cancer awareness group. This year, our design is it's not completely official yet, but preliminary is I don't know if you guys probably can't see it up there, but that would be the back, and then this would be the front. And this will say district, not department. So yeah, we will get those updated, but if any of you guys are interested in purchasing shirts, I don't have a price list yet. We're still working through that, but that'll be for the month of October. You'll see your firefighters in these shirts to raise money for With Courage. That's all I have.
Thank you, Union President Godfrey. And up next, the Volunteer Firefighter Association, and we have President Pete Goodman in the crowd.
Good afternoon, board. Volunteers have done a couple things in the last month. Cruise the Gut. We had an engine on display with a Cub Scout troop, and they were giving public information out. Type deal for that. Popcorn wagon was down there giving out popcorn. Of course, we take donations for whatever you would like to give us. September 9th, the See You Later had their 5K run. It's a run that's geared towards the state police, the sheriff's office, us, and the city. They donate the money from the run to our organizations. We take the truck out there and we fly the flag over the finish line for them for the duration of the race. And other than the pancake feed October 8th, that's about all we have for this month.
Sounds good. And you need volunteers for the pancake feed, or?
I'll take any help I can get.
Yeah.
Get a hold of me and I'll make a schedule for you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 3, which is Fire Chief's report.
We'll start with the statistical report that I included in your packet, which was run before I had actually pulled all the statistics over. Okay, so in your email, for those of you that are online, I sent you an updated version today. It was about 20 some calls off. Most of them were in the good intent and service calls. But the ambulance transports remain the same. We're running about a 10 to 12% increase monthly. The large reason for that increase in ambulance transports is the increased ambulances available to take the transports. Our call volume is going up slightly, but our available units to take calls and not transfer those calls to other agencies has improved our service to the community. So that's it's not good that the call volume keeps going up, but it's good that we're capturing and responding to more of the calls ourselves and having to call for help less. And I apologize for I ran the original report the first of the month, and I didn't give us the opportunity to bring in some of those calls that were impending out there. So that's why I had to run it the second time and do that. So if there's any questions on the statistical report or the secondary statistical report that I sent out. We have the air show coming up. Our last formal meeting was yesterday. It's all running together now. Somebody tell me how many days I have. The fire department will be out on the airfield Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday, we'll have a light crew out there along with all the chiefs for setup, and Blue Angels will be doing demos from 11 to 4, 12 to 4. There'll be a break in the middle. If you want to go out and take a look at the show and kind of get out in that area, they'll be out there. The full show, they'll practice about 3 o'clock, I think is what they said, or something like that along those lines. The full Blue Angels show. But we'll be out coordinating with both the troopers location and getting our vehicles in place and checking our spots and trying to make sure we can get parked with 14,000 people on the ramp on Saturday. So we expect, they're expecting about 14,000 at the show on Saturday. That's their bigger day. They're selling their tickets relatively good. They're in a good financial place. They said the best they've had in a long time, I think was his word. Even with all the money that has to pay us to be out there, because he never had to pay Hillsborough. So we're gearing up for that. We'll have off-duty staff staffing engine, as well as we'll have a brush rig, a tender, a command officer. We'll have operations in the command tower. We'll have the incident command center set up in the trooper's office. And we'll have logistics out, mobile, running around. Is that? And the medic cart. We'll have 2-person, medic cart out, handling all of any additional issues that occur. There will be some Metro West ambulances you'll see on the flight line. That is a contract that they have with, the air show. We have told them from the start, we don't have the capacity to put an ambulance or 2 ambulances on the flight line. So they agreed to bring in one of their sponsors to help them since they've been here. They just park. If there is a transport required, if they need, they'll bring them over to the gate. Our ambulances run up to the front of the gate and take them to the hospital from the gate. So that's the process for that side of the coin. Next meeting and the meeting after, you're going to see, it's going to be deja vu. In my preparation and advertising for the ordinances, both for the restrictions of volunteers and paid staff for being board members, as well as the fee schedule, I neglected to publish the agenda. I sent it to the paper, but did not ask them to publish it. So I have to run those ordinances through the process one more time so that we make sure we cover all the legal requirements. So you will see the 2 ordinances again, one next week's meeting, and one the following week. But they will be the clean ordinances. We won't have any amendments to have to go through. And are already publishing the agenda for next week. And we'll get the next one published next week for the following, so that we meet the publishing requirements for that process. And I apologize for having you do work twice. But I want to make sure I get it done right before I head out the door, and I don't want to leave anything hanging. Thank you. We just recently signed the contracts with Acuity CPAs. They are a CPA company out of Albany that they're finding a niche, I believe is what their term was, in fire districts. They do Lebanon, they do several other fire districts. They do we worked with them when we were in Amity, but the key to me was that they were working with 11 and a couple of other districts that do ambulance service. And they're very responsive. So we signed an agreement with them as an auditor, and we have a contract coming back to us from the accountant. They already are planning on having a meeting so they can build our funds out appropriately and make sure that we're setting up and running and ready to transition January 1. So we're moving those processes forward as we have committed to do that, and keeping things moving. While I can't speak to where we're at specifically, I hope to have an IGA from the city to the board by the end of the month, before I leave. So I think we're in a good position to be bringing that to the board. I'm hoping to have something from the city attorney here the next day or so of what they want to present to the district. I will run that through our attorney before I bring it to the board to make sure that we're online. And then I will try and have that either in the next agenda, depending on timeframes and how we can get that out the door. The IGA, that IGA will be specific to the transfer of the assets, the debts, and the individuals. We need that IGA along with a resolution, which we've already developed and have ready to go for PERS to become a PERS entity and put those people into our PERS, into our organization under our entity. So all of that is tied into the same process. So hopefully we'll have that done by the end of the month also. I spoke with Scott Burke today. They're working out some glitches in the computers. They want to make sure they're all dialed in and ready to go. What he will do as soon as he has them set up, they have them in, they're up and running. It's some of the email stuff they're working through. As soon as they have that cleaned up, he will set up some times and dates, or request some times and dates when you're available, and they can meet you here and come and get you your computer and get you set up into your email and get everything taken care of. And so we'll coordinate with you as soon as we start having that information from Scott Burke. And they are looking at 2 website providers currently to develop the new website for the fire district. One is the one the city uses, and one is which is a corporation that builds websites. And one is a gentleman that works for Clackamas Fire that is an IT person that does websites also. So they're going to set up a couple of different options for us to take a look at, and we can bring some examples back to the board as what kind of product and what features there are to make a decision on what that looks like. And I believe that's what I have for the board to see.
All right. Any assistant chiefs want to share anything?
Just a couple quick updates. So we are in the process of course, a lot of transition of business. Part of that was our OHA license for service. They have decided to go ahead and just transition without going through a full new business setup. So we do have our Oregon Health Authority service license to be able to operate an ambulance service. They had wanted to do a license survey, where they basically come in and look at our organization as a whole. They had wanted to do that basically about a month before COVID. They sent us a letter. So of course that went by the wayside for a while. They're planning to come in November and to do that just as a matter of norm, not necessarily because of the new business transition. We also had a firefighter EMT process here within the last couple of weeks, and have a candidate going into backgrounds for that, and then have a list established beyond that. One firefighter medic applicant that is finishing up backgrounds and should be wrapped within the next couple of weeks, and looking at a start date just beyond that.
Awesome. Thank you. That takes us to correspondence. Anything in anybody's mailbox? Hearing none, that takes us to informational items. I just wanted to say thank you to board members that took the time to attend Larry King's retirement last week, and to everybody involved in putting that together. It was a special night for him, and I thought it was really well done. So it wasn't over the top, and we got to hear him laugh and see him smile. So definitely will be missed, but he set the bar high. So hopefully some volunteers can step up to the plate, and it'll take more than one to fill that void. And any other informational items? Hearing none with that, our next meeting is Thursday, September 21st at 6 p.m. here at Station 1, and I'll close our meeting at 6:49 p.m.